In the late 1960s, all the way to the 1970s, the president's late father, former President Ferdinand Marcos Sr., sought ties with socialist countries. A state visit to the then Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, or the USSR, in 1976 would lead to the establishment of diplomatic relations between the two countries. But the Soviet Union was dissolved in 1991 after much upheaval, and the Philippines recognized the Russian Federation as its successor state. But as we all know, the winds of change do not always blow so gently. 33 years since, Russia is now fighting a war on Ukrainian soil, which it insists is nothing more than a special military operation. And that Russian special military operation in Ukraine, Russia's 4-day-old presidency of the United Nations Security Council, talk about timing, along with Russian-Philippine relations, highlighted by, of all things, a botched military helicopter deal worth $12.7 billion US. All that we talk about with the Russian ambassador to the Philippines, Marit Pavlov. Good evening. I'm Pia Hontiveros. Welcome to your weekly political appointment fix, Politics as Usual. Good evening, Ambassador Pavlov. Thank you very much for being with us tonight.
Good evening, Pia. Thank you so much for inviting me, because for me it's an honor and pleasure to be the one of the most important channel of communication. I know that usually the Russian ambassador is not giving the so big and so important floor. So again, I thank you for this invitation, and I'm ready to answer your very interesting question.
Yes, well, thank you, Mr. Ambassador, for saying yes to this interview. So you arrived in the country about 2.5 years ago, right?
Approximately.
September
Yes.
2020. That was right smack in the middle of the pandemic. So Russia provided the Sputnik vaccines, and we had a enhanced community quarantine. People were not free to move around.
You're right. And I was along and among these people. I also was not so free to go outside the embassy, but in any way I've got the possibility to met many officials in online manner, unfortunately. The same presentation of the credential was in online manner, you know.
Right.
In December, it was December 2, 2020. And after that, I was appointed as a real ambassador to the Philippines, the ambassador of the Russian Federation.
Okay. Mr. Ambassador, of course, now that your country is in Ukraine, you've had a very, very busy last 1 year, a year and a month already since February 2022. So busy, in fact, that in March last year, you wrote this opinion piece for a Philippine Star column, The Diplomatic Pouch. You did make waves, more like a tidal wave, I think, because there was a lot of reaction to that. You remember that column, sir? You know, when we try to search it on Philippine Star, it's not there anymore. It was taken down.
Yes, definitely, yes. I remember this column, and I remember the reaction of my colleagues.
In the diplomatic corps.
In the diplomatic corps, yes. And they decided to make, I don't know, some kind of protest against the same publication. And I understand that the electronic version of this column was
taken
left,
out.
yes, out. But in any way, we published on our Facebook, and many people from, I don't know, from many sides of the Philippines read it. And we noticed that it was some kind of 150,000 of visitors to read this article. Because it was another side of the information. Unfortunately, we here in the Philippines have only one side information. And my here the meeting with you it's the confirmation that the Filipino people is an open-minded people, and they would like to have first-hand information.
They'd like to hear a different perspective, I suppose. So, Mr. Ambassador, let's talk about Ukraine. Your country has never called it, your president, President Vladimir Putin, has never called it an invasion, and instead you call this a special military operation. It is defined that way. President Putin has said that it is a, quote, demilitarization and denazification of Ukraine, because he says Russian citizens living in that region are complaining about their rights having been violated. So the question is, does the Russian Federation believe that Ukraine still belongs to it in the way that, well, before you were all part of the USSR? So if you don't call it an invasion or a war, and instead of instead call it a special military operation, how do you explain that?
My explanation, it could be simple, and we can speak a lot of the reason, but to be concentrated on the item, we proposed many times to leave this tension between my country and the Ukraine, because we understand that the Western, so-called collective West, Western countries would like to use Ukraine as a tool in its policy, and to create tension between the Russian people and the Ukrainian one. We are not fighting against the Ukrainian people. We are fighting against the same leadership that would like to introduce the Nazification as a Nazi ideology. They would like to codify it.
Codify it,
yes. They would like to put in the law, and they are putting it. And this is a real threat. So in this case, we proposed, it was in December 2021, we proposed agreement on how to elevate the tension between the United States and the Russian Federation, between NATO and the Russian Federation.
Okay, Mr.
All our agreements, all our proposals were rejected, unfortunately.
Mr. Ambassador, when you say that the Ukrainian leadership, you're talking about Kiev, you're talking about President Zelensky,
Yes.
or are you?
Yes.
So they are allowing they are codifying Nazi ideology?
Yes,
That's what you're saying?
Yes, I'm confirming.
And you say this is a threat to Russia, and therefore you, how would you say it? You invaded Ukraine. You attacked
But we are not
Ukraine.
invading. You know that it was a real threat to the Russian Federation, because we understand that NATO would like to put Ukraine in the to make Ukraine as a member of the NATO. You understand that. Maybe we can also have another example how we can consider the same entrance of Finland.
Okay.
Yes.
Finland, right.
Yes.
Right.
As a member of NATO. But in any way, you can understand that if Ukraine can be a member of NATO, the same timing of the missile from the Ukrainian territory to Moscow, it will last maybe 10 or 15 minutes.
Okay. So the very same thing that is happening now, Mr. Ambassador, with, well, Finland just joining NATO, as far as you're concerned, that is like a threat to you, because the border with NATO countries has doubled, and now you're saying you were trying to prevent Ukraine from joining NATO.
The same thing as it.
Was there any other way to do that instead of, and not by attacking or invading Ukraine?
We have a real information that, first of all, a little bit of history. in 2014, yes, it was a coup d'etat
In Ukraine.
In Ukraine, yes. After that, we understand that some region, it means Donbass region, populated by the Russian-speaking, not Russian citizens, Russian-speaking people, yes, are threatening. And we decided to find out the way how to find some peaceful solution. We concluded the Minsk agreement. It was also approved by the UN Security Council.
Mr. Ambassador, just to be very clear about this, so it isn't like you are trying to re-annex Ukraine. This is not a re-annexation campaign. So, Mr. Ambassador, yes. So it's not. All what you're just trying to do is to prevent another NATO ally, another NATO country from sharing its borders with you, because NATO to you, to Russia, is a threat.
Yes, in your answer, that's also my reply. Yes, thank you so much. But I can confirm that we had real information that if we will not start special military operation on February 24, it was just the preparation to attack the Russian Federation.
Who would attack the Russian Federation?
The Ukrainian forces.
Ukrainian forces.
And
backed by
the West.
All right.
And we know that for the 8 years from the 2014 till February 2022,
right.
The Donbass region was shattered every day. Nobody mentioned it. The total silence of the West media, unfortunately.
Well, Mr. Ambassador, Mr. Ambassador, I can imagine how the other embassies in this country are reacting right now to what you're saying. But we're going to have to take a very, very quick break. Still with us, Russian Ambassador to the Philippines, Marit Pavlov. We'll be back. Stay tuned. Welcome back. This is Politics as Usual. Still with us, the Russian Ambassador to the Philippines, Marit Pavlov. Mr. Ambassador, in June last year, you met with then President-elect Bongbong Marcos, and you were asked in the press conference if you spoke about the President's stand on Ukraine. At the time, he had said, and we quote him, with the rest of the world, he stood with the rest of the world for Russia, to respect Ukraine's freedom and its citizens' democratic way of life, and this is how you responded. Do we have that soundbite?
As far as I understand, President-elect would like to continue his independent policy and to cooperate with Russian Federation.
Ambassador Pavlov, like the diplomat you are, and all your other colleagues are like that, you're very diplomatic in the way you answer questions. You try to evade answering. At that time, you were very hesitant to say what you really talked about. Are you at liberty now to tell us more, to give us an idea about what our then President-elect and now President thought about the Ukraine-Russia war?
No, we are talking about the most of our confederation. We're concentrated on our cooperation. Maybe we can ask the same administration of your president regarding the particular details of
that particular conversation.
But I concentrated on how we can proceed of our cooperation, and I understand it was also confirmed in the further declaration of your president and the leadership, not only your president, other officials, that the Filipino side would like to continue our cooperation in very, very specific.
Yes.
You're calling pragmatic.
Yeah, well, there are other ways, yes. But we will talk about Russia-Philippines cooperation a little later on. So let's get the more serious matters in a way, if you could say that. to the side. But can you at least tell us, did it sound to you like, given his statement before you met, did it sound to you like he had changed his mind?
I hope no. I don't think so that he changed his mind.
No, he changed his mind about Ukraine, about his stand on Ukraine and Russia.
I didn't see any information, I didn't declaration.
Okay.
Yes,
All right.
I know that he spoke also with his Ukrainian colleague, and is well known that it's was published on newspapers. But at the same time, we are continuing to cooperate, basing on the principles that the Philippines now is neutral to the
Neutral.
yes, to the Ukrainian crisis event, and he continue. Our president is the promoter of the balanced foreign policy, and as he said, we are friends to
Friend to all, enemy
and
to none.
enemy to none.
He says that also about when you
Yes,
talk about China.
it's the concentration of
Yes.
his foreign policy. So I can
Yes.
confirm that for us it's a good example how to promote our cooperation.
Mr. Ambassador, moving on, your country just 4 days ago on April 1 took the rotating presidency of the United Nations Security Council. Of course, rotating presidency lasts a month, and all countries of the Security Council get to be president, I understand. Does your country see this as something that could not have happened at a better time? Is this good timing for you? And are you going to use it in this Ukrainian crisis?
Frankly speaking, maybe there is some consideration. I'm not talking about we are wrong or not, but it's a routine procedure.
Right.
Every member of the Security Council has the presidency.
For 1 month, and
For
it is
1
in
month, yes,
alphabetical
yes.
order.
And we would like to concentrate our presidency on the concrete issue. Without talking till now, I don't think that we would like to talk also regarding the international issues, because we have our specific agenda. First of all, we have three particular points. One of the points is the uncontrolled spread of weapons. It will be, as far as I remember, in the program, the agenda on April 10. We would like to speak about violation of agreements regulating the export of arms and military products. We understand that it's black market of weapons is flooding in every part of the world. The second very important issue that I would like to raise, it's the multilateralism. Multilateralism, yes. We would like to have open debate on the protection of the principle of the UN Charter. You know that we have also a special informal group of friends in defense of the UN Charter. And we would like to invite also the Philippines to take part in this group. And a very interesting and very serious matter that we would like to discuss during our presidency. It will be the ministerial debate on the Middle East settlement scheduled on April 25. It will be also in the presence with the presence of my minister, Lavrov. I think so that he will be given the visa application.
It's interesting that you have these three issues.
Yes, three important issues.
All right.
And yes, and it could be also some specific issue regarding the, for example, we are talking on the Middle East settlement. We will talk also the Yemeni issue, Syria, and so
But
on.
Mr. Ambassador,
So
you know what's interesting is that when you search a Russian presidency, UN Security Council, the first thing that comes up is the protest that is going on because your commissioner for children's rights, who is supposed to speak at an informal meeting of the council, well, she's being denounced for that. That is what people are interested in.
Yes,
And
yes, yes.
the British mission, for example, of the UN, to the UN, doesn't like the idea.
Yes, yes, yes. I know that it is also so-called informal meeting using the same term of the UN Security Council. It's a area formula meeting. Area formula meetings, it's some kind of informal meeting between the security members of the Security Council to discuss the way how to proceed on very specific issue. And for this very interesting matter regarding the evacuation from the war zone of the Ukrainian children. You are talking about it, yes?
Yes, yes.
But how we can imagine that we would like to leave the kids and the children in the war zone? It's not as a human being logic.
All right. Mr. Ambassador, we need to take just one more break into the final stretch of the show. We'll be right back. This is Politics as Usual. Still on Politics as Usual, our guest, Russian Ambassador to the Philippines, Marit Pavlov. Ambassador Pavlov, we need to jump to this question because you talked about how in the UN Security Council, Russia wants to bring up this issue of all these weapons that are flooding in.
Yes.
Yes, but since we're talking weapons here, let's talk about this so-called threat of a nuclear war, this so-called possibility of a third world war. Is there one hanging over our heads? You've been quoted as saying that you would not initiate a nuclear war, but can your country respond in a similar manner? Are we heading in that direction of a war, of a World War III?
Very interesting and very serious question, because really the nuclear war, it's a real threat to the whole human being. But unfortunately,
all of mankind.
yes, whole of mankind, yes. But unfortunately, it's a real danger for the whole world. I'd like to put on the table only one example. When the two leaders of the Russian Federation and the China are discussing how to promote the peace settlement in Ukraine, it was announced by the Deputy Minister of Defense of Great Britain that they would like to supply depleted uranium shells or rounds to the Ukrainian forces. Yes, we understand that it is not the real nuclear weapon. But at the same time, we had a real declaration from the Ukrainian leadership, the same President Zelensky, who wanted this nuclear weapon in his hand.
Yes.
And these depleted Ukrainian rounds or shells, it's another steps towards the real nuclear threats, because we understand that after the using of these rounds or shells.
Mr. Ambassador, I wanted to ask you, because what people are afraid of is the longer this goes on, the more opportunities arise that could not just protract this war, turn this into a protracted war, but that it will end up in a much bigger war. Do you want to see a quick end to this, or does Russia want a long war?
My answer could be very simple and could be very short. It takes two to tango. You know, it's very, very maybe common answer, but we were very close to reach an agreement 1 year ago in Istanbul by conducting our negotiations with the Ukrainian side.
Okay.
We have a real proposal for stopping the hostilities. And unfortunately, it was not the interest of the Western countries, and they would like to proceed on this war. We, another time, were setting our interests and our desire to have some peaceful settlement. And we found that the Chinese leadership also elaborate and create a very interesting proposal, consonant to the idea of the Russian Federation.
All right. Ms. Ambassador, I need to come back here to the Philippines. We need to talk very quickly about, because we have the last 1.5 minutes of the show, this $12.7 billion military transport chopper deal. In October, you said you are reaffirming the Russian side is continuing to fulfill all its obligations, but President Marcos has already said that this is no longer carrying through. What is the latest? Because our president was saying that we're going to try and get back that $1.9 billion deposit. Is that still possible? Or, is Russia going to, because you can't deliver the choppers unless the Philippines pays for it?
Very interesting question, but it is not the embassy or the ambassador who signed the contract.
Yes.
There are two entities, Russian entity and the Department of National Defense, and it will be the talks and negotiation between them how to settle the problem.
All right. And Mr. Ambassador, OPEC Plus, of course, of which Russia...
We are ready to continue, continue our also technical military cooperation.
All right. But oil and gas, OPEC Plus, of which Russia is a member, you just decided to cut production by 1.6 million barrels from May to the end of the year. As a major oil producer, is Russia going to help? Can Russia help the Philippines address rising oil prices?
We are ready to continue our cooperation in many fields, including the energy one.
Okay.
I know that there are some requests from the Filipino side how to promote cooperation, for example, in the liquid LNG, yes? LNG and the same crude oil. We are ready to cooperate. We should put on the table all the requests from the Filipino side. One was a promising area, and I just like to mention the field of the so-called nuclear cooperation, nuclear peaceful cooperation. It means the small nuclear reactors and the floating nuclear reactors.
Ambassador Pavlov, I really wish we had more time. We're still supposed to talk about so many interesting things going on in the world and in the region that has a huge impact at the same time, Philippine-Russia relations. But I guess we need to just have another part 2. And then I'm sure the other embassies will want to have their say also. But Ambassador Marat Pavlov of the Russian Embassy here in Manila. Sir, thank you very much. Maraming salamat po. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
We've been told before, don't talk politics at the dinner table or the family reunion or in Viber groups and risk warfare, digital or otherwise. But we can talk about it here at this table on this show, your weekly political appointment fix, politics as usual. I'm Pia Hontiveros. See you back here next Wednesday, 8 p.m.